It's been a really long time. Days passed, months passed, seasons passed, and we're now officially in spooky season. And with spooky season comes something called Samhain. Samhain is a Gaelic holiday celebrated on November 1st, and it's all about the harvest, or ancestor work, or protecting against evil spirits. Honestly, I don't really know exactly what the lore of this holiday is. It's just mixed at this point. I think it goes without saying, but there's no Samhain in Romania. There's not even a specific day in which we celebrate the harvest. Not even traditionally. The harvest was celebrated all throughout September, October, even well into November. You could say that the entire autumn season was an occasion of celebration for the harvest. Of course, we'd be the ones to want multiple days to party and celebrate. There are specific dates for ancestor worship in the Orthodox calendar, which also mixes in elements of traditional holidays. But it's not just one. They're pretty periodic holidays because it turns out you don't really need to wait for October or November to honor your ancestors. Who knew? Traditionally for Romania, the entire autumn season is about the harvest, about preserving vegetables and fruits for the winter, about making pickles, making jam, and especially making wine. This is the season of harvesting grapes and transforming them into wine, followed up by sharing the first grape juice with the rest of the family and the other winemakers, and then transforming that into a competition of who had the best harvest or the best winemaking techniques. And of course, we have to supervise that entire process over the winter. If the local harvest has been affected by changing weather conditions, then everyone has an opportunity to meet up and just be sad and frustrated and complain about it all together. And you'd think it does, but the subject of climate change never actually makes it into the discussion. Wine depression is actually more important. And I guess it's not that different from what Samhain is supposed to symbolize, but I still can't really connect to it. The same way I can connect to the idea of Halloween. We don't celebrate Halloween either. It's more of an opportunity for club parties and capitalism. We don't have traditions around it. We don't even really decorate. Though I guess the shops have been trying to attract us towards doing that. I'm not sure it works. We don't have trick-or-treating either. And I think that's because that's already included in the winter holidays. We have something called colindat or pizzerai, which is basically kids go house to house singing Christmas carols, or in the case of pizzerai, they just ask you to give them stuff, and whoever answers the door will have to give them fruits, sweets, or even money. So when we're talking about magical practices, Halloween and Samhain are said to be the time when the veil is the thinnest. The veil being the boundary between this world and the other worlds, specifically the spirit world. So the communication between us and spirits, it's said to be easier and easier to establish. Some even say spirits can come into this world and visit family, friends, and specific places that are important to them. Traditionally for Romania, this is actually said to be happening on the 30th of November or St. Andrew's Day. Spirits are said to be coming back home to visit their family, their loved ones, or not so loved ones, because you shouldn't be encouraging this connection, but rather you should be protecting yourself from the vengeful spirit of your mother or father-in-law, or evil spirits mimicking your family and trying to get into your life, or anyone who's got some beef with some ancestor of yours and is trying to ruin your life right now in revenge. So line your windows and doors with garlic. Where did I hear that before? Yeah, vengeful spirit and vampire are actually the same thing. traditionally. But of course, we just can't forget the autumn staples. So we have the drab, foggy weather, the anxiety of the starting school year, even if you've graduated more than a decade ago, the horrible traffic honks because said start of the school year just overwhelms the cities, wet leaves sticking the sole of your feet. But hey, it's not all bad. We also have the exciting and soothing scent of wine and wasps everywhere. What most people consider staple autumn scents, at least for me, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate, are actually winter staple scents because of one thing, and that's hot wine. Because the spices that we use when boiling wine to make hot wine, the beverage of choice to warm yourself up when it's sub-zero degrees Celsius in winter, are the staple autumn scents that everybody else uses for pumpkin related stuff. And speaking of pumpkins, I actually used to eat baked pumpkin during the autumn season, back when my grandmother would actually grow pumpkins in her garden. But I think it's pretty expensive now to buy out of shops, so I don't think it's a seasonal staple. So because of all of this period is very strange for me. Looking at the witchcraft community, I just can't relate to the Samhain spirit that has taken over everyone. So for everyone else who can maybe relate to me right now, I know, it feels a little bit alienating, doesn't it? A bit like you're out of place, a bit like you're just doing your own thing while everyone else is going by the set instruction list. A bit like maybe you should follow along. You're not alone. There's multiple corners of the world that don't even know what Samhain is, that go by a completely different tradition. And there's multiple corners of the world that, even if they do culturally have Samhain or something similar, they just don't celebrate it because they can't connect to it. There's people who celebrate the seasons as a whole, or it's just not their thing. For me, autumn is a season of preparation. It's the season where we're taking the fruit of our labor and transforming it into something that we can enjoy with or without community, in comfort or in harsh times. It's a social season, but it's also a season where we take the time to look at ourselves and see what is it that we need, what do we have to pay a bit more attention to so we can prepare for winter, which in my opinion is the season of comfort. Autumn is nostalgia and hard work. It's looking back at what you've planted and what you've gone through so you can grow this wonderful fruit that you're now harvesting. It's more for the living than it is for the dead. It's a reminder that we are alive. You are alive right now. You are living right now. And that you should be taking care of this life right now, so the world won't seem as harsh later on. It's also a reminder that while it takes a lot of work to plant and take care of something, it takes a lot of work to be able to harvest that something, and the enjoyment comes afterwards. And this is why I don't feel the need for a specific date to celebrate this entire process, because there's already a celebration in every harvest, in every pickle jar and every jam jar, every zakuska jar, and in every bottle of wine. I honor this season through focusing on the transformation of the self, by looking back and acknowledging my achievements, and then making an inventory of what I should be focusing from now on. Where are the blind spots? What is it that I need right now? And because I consider this season to be one of preparation, it's time to maybe adapt my schedule a little bit. The days are getting shorter, it's getting colder, so maybe I consider, when do I sleep, when do I wake up? I change my wardrobe with warmer clothes, and maybe even consider doing some medical checkups. But I started finding it more important to give myself the time, because nature already does it. We have an entire season to transform and to prepare. Nature gives us this opportunity. So why not synchronize ourselves with the way nature flows. Take our time with every step of the way in this process. Transform at the same time with nature. Instead of using one day to celebrate and honor this entire process, I personally would rather integrate little celebrations every now and then throughout this entire process. Of course, this doesn't mean that Samhain is bad. I simply don't need Samhain, and other people might need differently. Other people need Samhain. However, the more posts I see on this, the more I notice that there's the tendency to treat Samhain as a checkpoint. Like it's just a date on the calendar where you're supposed to do these things. You're supposed to make a meal and decorate and connect to your ancestors, but not because you've gone through the process, the natural process of transitioning that's related to the autumn season. It's like everyone celebrates Samhain because it's written in the calendar, and everyone just forgets about the dinner the next morning. Samhain's gone. What's next? It's just an event with more or less clear instructions. How do we celebrate Samhain? How do we make a Samhain altar? How do we connect to the ancestors? What do we offer to the ancestors? How do we make a dumb supper? But I haven't seen anyone asking what stands behind Samhain. I've seen plenty of people make posts about the history of Samhain and what people have historically done to celebrate this particular Sabbath. But ultimately, I think people forget that Samhain is just a name given by a community of a certain culture to a celebration that was important to them for a reason. So maybe we should first ask ourselves, what are we celebrating? Do we even have something to celebrate? Not that they wouldn't have celebrated Samhain even if the harvest was poor that year, because celebration is really about gratitude, being grateful for what you have, because it's really your effort, your hopes, and your life that you're celebrating. At the same time, everyone's talking about connecting to ancestors. But why? Is it because the veil is thinning at this time of year? There's even discourse around whether the veil really is thinning or not, and if we should be connecting to ancestors or spirits at this time of year. Obviously, nobody can say for sure, but is this the only time when we can connect to ancestors? Obviously not. Imagine if there was someone who would just contact you once a year. Would you consider that to be somebody you're close to? Would you even be open to helping them out? Probably not. There's not much of a connection there, to be honest. Maybe for some the answer is that, well, since we're celebrating the harvest, which means we're looking back at the seeds we've planted, it's only natural that we would be looking back at the generations before us, right? Maybe for others, it's learning from past generations. So we now know how to do things in the present, honoring the ancestry through tradition. And maybe for some, it's the simple fact that during autumn, everything is dying. So why not look at our dead as well? But this is a call to identify why you're trying to connect. Why are you doing what you're doing? Just like with magic, connection requires us to be intentional. And you can't be intentional if you're just going through the motions just because. And unfortunately, I have seen an emphasis on doing ancestor work because it's the time to do ancestor work. So imagine this. Somebody turns up at your house because Witchcraft Lover 9000 on the internet told them that this is the time of the year when they should be visiting you. No other reason. Rituals need intention too. You might want to connect to your ancestors through your ritual. That might be your intent. But what does connection mean to you? Just doing some steps in a ritual won't magically make a bridge between you and the other world. A door won't appear in front of you and you can step through it with no changes to yourself. This is not what connecting to something means. Connection means being aware, respecting, understanding, trusting, being intentional about being genuine and accepting of the other. So I believe that autumn is also the time to remember what connecting to community is. And maybe this is exactly why some people need Samhain. It's not about connecting to ancestors. It's not about celebrating the harvest that they're not really thinking about. It's just simply doing some things together with a community and feeling accepted and integrated in a space. And maybe that's enough. This might have traditionally been done through the work that you'd put in for months for the crops that were supposed to feed your family for the rest of the year, and then working some more together with the community to harvest those crops, and then being happy about it together. This is not exactly the reality of the modern people nowadays. I personally live in a community that still respects the traditional flow of the seasons. So harvesting, and we're preparing vegetables and fruits for the winter. But we're not really harvesting because we're buying the ingredients. We don't really have land to harvest. And it turns out to be considered more of a financial burden compared to an achievement. And of course, it becomes even more of a burden when you realize that it's really the female side of most families that is responsible with doing this entire process on top of their jobs and other responsibilities. So it's more of a stressor than an occasion for celebration now. Except for the wine, that's still a traditional harvest. So for the modern person, connecting to ancestors can simply be connecting to that idea of joint effort and enjoyment of results together with your community, even if you're not doing the same thing that they used to do. It's about showing that you truly understand why it was important for them. So for the modern person, this can simply be showing gratitude for the job you have, the income you have that's allowing you to live the life you have, or showing gratitude for any improvement, no matter how small, to your living situation. Showing gratitude for having somebody to lean on. And if you don't, you still have yourself. And there's plenty of things that you can be grateful for when it comes to your own efforts through the past year. Because to move into a new stage, you need to first acknowledge the past, your past efforts, your results, your shortcomings. So if I were to summarize the meaning of autumn in one word, I would say it's about respect. Personally, for this season, I've been focusing a lot more on transformational work and rituals around movement. And like preserving vegetables for winter, I tried my hand at conserving this energy of movement into a special blend of loose incense. My ancestor work hasn't really changed. I do have a daily ancestor veneration routine where I give them offerings and we have a little chat. So I have a pretty open line of communication to that side. I've honestly just been drinking a lot more wine. I did have something new in mind, and that is to work with one specific ancestor spirit, and they're a bit more of a problematic ancestor for me, and it's part of my transformation work for this season. But there's no Samhain or Halloween or spooky season really for me. That's actually December, and it's night already, like 5 p.m. Speaking of changing schedules,